Chairman, I'd like to introduce Mr. Phillip Sweeney.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. Perhaps I might refer to as Phil, since we had the opportunity of meeting you up in Canberra back in March. Hang on, try and get some. That's better. I met you at the meet and greet before your first appearance at the Parliament House with the committee looking into the 4 banks. And the next day, while we were at the committee, I handed you a deed supporting the claims of around 150 widows to receive a survivorship pension in their time of need and distress, which is not being paid by NAB's discredited superannuation trustee Nullis. Now, I'd like to acknowledge that I received a letter from the Chairman yesterday where the Chairman committed to the model litigant principles, and I'll be picking up this matter with Ross after the meeting, where I left it off with Mr. Thorburn at the last AGM. So there's been about a lost year there, but I'm very hopeful that Ross will be able to progress this matter. So that's my introductory comments. Now on to questions. If I might take inspiration from Oscar Wilde, to lose a CEO may be regarded as misfortune. To lose both a CEO and a chairman looks like carelessness. However, words fail me when this is the second time in 15 years, almost to the day, that NAB won the Quinella of shame when in 2004, Chairman Charles Allen and CEO Frank Cutuccio both fell on their swords in the wake of the foreign exchange scandal, which arose due to lax internal controls and a culture of greed. As Adele Ferguson writes in her book, Banking Bad, on page 372, the most startling part of the final report was Hayne's dressing down of NAB executives Ken Hayne and Andrew Thorburn. As well as singling them out for public shaming, Hayne noted, with regard to the behaviour of its most senior executives, and I quote from the Royal Commissioner, NAB stands apart from the other 3 banks. The Royal Commissioner continues, having heard from the CEO, Mr. Thorburn, and that of the Chair, Dr. Henry, I'm not as confident as I would wish to be that the lessons of the past have been learned. Overall, my fear that there may have been a wide gap between the public face NAB seeks to show and what it does in practice remains. In an opinion piece published on the 25th of August in 2018, titled Disregard, Lack of Respect, NAB Leads a Poorly Behaved Pack, Adele Ferguson wrote, it does not get much worse for a bank to be told that it's total disregard for the law and the regulators. And my point is proven when one reads the headlines in today's Financial Review. ASIC drops bombshell on NAB. Now, doesn't that actually mean that NAB in the past, and I acknowledge there's a new management team, but in the past, NAB has had a total disregard for the law and regulators. And then in the past, when it comes to dealing with complaints of serious misconduct, NAB has a practice of adopting the 3 Ds. To delay, deny, deceive. Would the Chairman agree that NAB shareholders, as well as customers, have a legitimate expectation that the new management team at NAB will not be presenting a face to the public which differs from what NAB actually does in practice? Would the Chairman agree that when the public face is that presented before the Standing Committee of Economics Parliament House, when the Chairman in his role of acting CEO made important commitments at the hearings in March and November, this legitimate expectation is even more substantive? The 6 principles outlined in the final report of the Royal Commissioner Hayne are that institutions and individuals in those institutions need to A, obey the law, B, not mislead or deceive, C, act fairly, D, provide services that are fit for purpose, E, deliver services with reasonable care and skill, and the last one, which is important when trustees are involved, when acting for another, do so in the best interest of that other. Now, if I refer back to principle number 2 of B, not to mislead or deceive, might I ask the Chairman if he has read the Royal Commissioner's final report in its entirety?
So thank you, Mr. Sweeney.
Yeah, so I take that as a no.
Sorry.
Might I ask the other?
Sorry, I thought you had asked me a question.
Well, the question was, have you read the Royal Commissioner's report in its entirety?
I have read the Royal Commissioner's report. In its entirety would imply the appendix, which I have not.
Volume
I've read
one.
volume 1 in its entirety twice.
Might I ask the other directors if they have also read the Royal Commission's report, Volume 1 in its entirety? Please raise your hands. Thank you. Now, as another interesting document, this is my last question for this section, I'll come back with more later. I've asked the directors, have they read a book titled The Origins of Ethical Failure, Lessons for Leaders? Now, this book was actually written by a former NAB whistleblower. So have any of the directors read this particular work, which actually won an award, a management award?
This is Dennis Gentleman's.
That's correct.
Yes, I have.
Well, at least I thank those directors that have, which I count as one, plus the chairman. I'll be returning with more questions, but that's my opening introduction.
You made a few comments, and then I'm sorry, I was trying to answer them earlier. So the board took very seriously the findings of the Royal Commission. Obviously, many items came out during the evidence of the Royal Commission. They and other conclusions we came to were also part of our self-assessment into culture governance and accountability, which we published and were first banked to publish in November last year. And that's formed a blueprint for many of the reforms that we have underway. So thank you very much, Mr. Sweeney, for your questions and comments, and also for your ongoing work. I know that you are working tirelessly on behalf of the stakeholders that you're seeking to represent.
Thank you, and I'm happy to meet with Ross after the meeting. Thank you.